All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. 4 reviews up this week, and I've checked, they're all reviews. Been a while since that's happened, but keeps things simple this week. Anyway, first up is OTXO. OTXO. Like, I know what the spelling looks like, but Galax assures us that this is linguistically correct.
That's an loud train.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. I thought I
yeah.
turned it
It
down
looks like
enough.
Yeah, it was a soundless title screen, so.
yeah.
Well, no, there was some sound.
Still, I don't know if we want to take that again.
It's fine.
All right. Um, anyway, so Ocho here is a violent top-down shooter with roguelike elements. Play as the protagonist, entering an inexplicable mansion in search of his lost love. As you venture deeper into the mansion, more of its secrets will be unveiled to you. The mansion should be not graced by its master. The master should grace the mansion. Okay, there, Steam page. Like, right. So first up, um, I know Ocho here has come up before. Seems to be fairly popular, and try to guess the context in which this game is discussed in.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like,
Hotline Miami.
hmm.
Only black and white instead of extremely neon.
Among other things, I mean, this has actually been the central conceit I've been thinking about as I've played this game, because I first learned about this game through Lucas Rayovic, who professed his undying love to it. Um, I guess spoilers for the review. I'm not as high on the game. Um, and I've also seen like other reviews, really compare this game in depth with Hotline Miami. I'm taking the opposite track. I find these games, too different from each other to really compare. Like, I get it though; they're both fast, over the top, uh,
Top down,
violent,
you mean?
top down.
Shooty, shooty, blam, blam.
Yeah, like I can see the comparisons, but and it's not even like the devil's in the details. There are some pretty startling differences between the two games.
I mean, even right now, we're being talked to by some guy with a mustache that we're not supposed to immediately shoot. So.
Right. Well, it's not just that. This game is a lot. It's trying to do the surreality, and it's not really on the level of Hotline Miami by any stretch of the imagination. It's too lucid. Hotline Miami was literally drug fueled in game. Like, your character was on, psychedelic substances as he did his murder spree. That was one of the, background questions of Hotline Miami. Is everything that's happening here actually going on, or is it just a drug trip? Like, but that's the thematic difference. The biggest structural differences is, okay, first of all, this is a roguelike. Hotline Miami is not. Like, in any
Yeah,
way.
Hotline Miami, my understanding, has fairly tightly designed missions.
Yes. Handmade.
Which you cannot do in procedural generation.
No. They're handmade. All of the weaponry is handed out level by level. It operates in your traditional roguelike structure. It's procedurally generated. Not so much the levels themselves, but like the order you hit and stuff like that there. And like before the game starts, you get access to the alcohol, which is this game's tonic, skulls, the gameplay modifiers that we see in these types of games. And in the case of OTXO here, they're not permanent. You die, they go away. And the rogue light element is adding more alcohol to the selection. Also later on, there's a churchgoer that shows up that allows you to toggle the weapon selection in the game. So that's a big difference on its own there. But another big one is the combat. In fact, I think this is the most pronounced difference that a lot of people miss the trick. Because OTXO here, it's all about the gunplay. As in, there are no melee weapons of any sort. It's all guns.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at the very beginning when we were on the beach there that you could pick up that ore.
Yeah,
but I guess we don't have any melee proficiencies.
Yeah. Well, once again, that is a very big difference from Hotline Miami. Now, I will concede that gunplay is a huge part of Hotline Miami, but just as important is the melee weapons. For a lot of reasons, if you have a melee weapon, you usually had to be more strategic about your attacking, because
use more stealth and whatnot.
Yeah, or making creative use of the door. That's another big difference between Hotline Miami and this game. The doors, there's a strategic element there in that you have to break them down, but it's more like a SWAT team breach than what the Hotline Miami was doing with its doors, which were a major part of the gameplay flow. But I think the biggest difference between the two games is you have a health bar in this game. You didn't really have that in Hotline Miami. For all its surreality and all that stuff, it played being attacked with weapons fairly realistically, a lot more realistically than what you would expect from a game like that, I think. And that is, it does the Rainbow Six way of things, or at least the early Rainbow Six games, i.e., a couple of bullets, maybe even one, is good enough to put you down. By extension, that also flows to the enemies. Everyone's very brittle. And that's just not the case in this game. You have a health bar. The enemies usually take more than one bullet. And that goes all the way up to the bosses. The bosses are probably the most roguelike thing here, in the sense that, you face a big end boss, and, they're not soldiers. The first boss is a fucking chain snake. And the other big addition to this game that makes it very different from Hotline Miami, that comes to mind right now, is the thing that really cements to me that this is the kind of thing that I would have seen in the mid-2000s. And that's, I forget what they call it in game, but it's fucking bullet time.
Focus.
Focus, that's it. They call it focus, but it's fucking bullet time. It operates like bullet time did, in every other game in 2005. As in, it slows down time. You can see the bullets. It's a big part of how the combat flow goes. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's another big difference between that and this game and Hotline Miami.
Mm.
So once again, I get the comparisons to the two games, but I just found enough stark differences to find this to be an apple and oranges situation. Like these games are actually too different from each other to properly line up. It's like reviewing Braid and comparing it to Super Meat Boy, just because they're platformers. Yeah, okay, they're the same in the broad strokes, but they're also very different. And okay, it goes a bit deeper, and this game is probably influenced by Hotline Miami, because the first Hotline Miami turned 10 years old recently. So that is certainly more than enough time to leave its mark on the video game world. So with that out of the way, how does OTXO stand on its own? It's pretty good, if I'm being honest. And I am. Like, I just don't find this game super special amazing. But I think that's mainly down to the roguelike elements. Like, I'm just not going to find roguelike elements this rote to be all that interesting. I mean, sure, applied to a game like a top-down shooter is more interesting than another platformer. But even like a shooting game has its limits there. I'm not, like I said, once again, I'm not saying this game is bad or anything. I'm just saying that I don't find this game to be the replacement to Hotline Miami. However tighter the gameplay may be, or whatever. Like, it just doesn't scratch the same itch that game provided in most respects. I mean, sure, okay, the ultra violence is there. I'm like, I can also get that from like the Binding of Isaac. And honestly, I know praising Edmund McMillan is kind of verboten in the network, but the Binding of Isaac is still an amazing roguelike game. I'm not going to discount the game because of the first. This is a bit more standard, and I'll be honest, like, I didn't like what they did with the doors. Like, I don't like this tactical breach shit.
Yeah. I kind of wish I could go around the doors.
Right.
Because the problem with the doors is it's not quiet. As soon as I kick that door in, everybody in a 12-mile radius knows shit's going down. I can't use any sort of stealth or anything like that to...
Well, here's the thing. There's a whiskey for that.
I know.
I know. I get your complaint here.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
that shouldn't be a power-up. That should be just a native gameplay option.
I'm not going to disagree, because that kind of interplay was a big part of Hotline Miami as well. It's just stealth here matters less. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter at all, but, you can take a lot more bullets, not just in the sense of, you have a health bar, but also rolling. Rolling, you're supposed to roll a lot because you're invincible. And I think that was a thing in the Hotline Miami as well. Like,
I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm like I want to say that was a thing. But in OTXO here, it is very much like you roll your bulletproof, and you're supposed to incorporate that into your gunplay. I'll be honest, I hardly rolled because there was never a good opportunity to roll.
There really isn't, unless there's a like turret or something.
Yeah. Apparently the turrets are broken, like in some fashion. Like I said, I'm not going to deep dive into like the weapons and how much damage they do and all that. I just remember Rayovic mentioning it in his video today. He brought this up. So, I mean, like I said, I'm taking a different track here. I'm like, but like overall, it's a very solid game. It's just, it's a very different flavor than Hotline Miami.
I will say, like, foam grain effect, particularly on the main menu, does give me a headache. So if that's something that's an issue,
right,
definitely could be a problem for some.
But you can turn it off.
No.
Huh?
You can. The main menu foam grain effect cannot be turned off.
Oh, just in gameplay.
Well, if it's in gameplay, it's much more subdued. But like the one on the main menu was like actually painful.
Okay, sorry. I misunderstood.
Anyway, so in terms of pricing, this game will run you $15, which I think that's about appropriate for a game like this, depending on how much this kind of style of game clicks with you. Like, I'll be honest, like, I liked it, but it's like, it didn't quite click with me. So, I thought it was, I think it's a good game, but not a great game. So, also worth noting, the OTXO soundtrack is available for $6. I'd honestly pass on the soundtrack here. Like, look, if there is one area where Hotline Miami just absolutely curb stomps OTXO here, it's the soundtrack. I've listened to the soundtrack of Hotline Miami outside of the game multiple times. I can't even remember anything from this game musically. So, and there's also a bunch of other bundles here with games that we haven't reviewed, so those tend to be beyond the pale. But overall, a solid game. I would recommend. Petty, what about you?
I think
Anything
it's fine. I wish I had more time to mess with it other than just here.
Right. Believe me, that's how I felt this week, but in between dealing with children and also with my other game, there was not a lot of time to fit this one into the schedule.
Like, it's definitely, if Hotline Miami was something that you kind of liked but wish you could take more hits, this might be something a little bit more your speed.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say this is objectively better than Hotline Miami, because, again, they're different gameplays like we touched on a bit.
Yep.
But if Hotline Miami was close but not quite it for you, this might be something to look at. But obviously, if you didn't like gameplay of either, this isn't going to change your mind.
Galvix, anything you wish to add?
No, I think I'm good.
All right then. So that'll about do it for OTXO here. Be sure to tune in after the break as Petty Fan will be reviewing Vagrant.